Okay, so we are on to the advanced topics for Google Analytics. Again, this video is going to be a little bit longer in length. That's just because it's so information dense. We're going to be covering about 51 points that are directly associated with the Google Analytics certification exam. So we're going to start that, and that's going to be the bulk of the video, and then we'll have some closing thoughts about how to approach the practice exam and beyond. So Google Analytics, if you choose to install your tracking code on two different domains, meaning this URL is different from this URL, then these are two different websites, but Google will actually take care of processing the data for each of those individual websites and count those users and sessions differently. I can't think of a very strong case for why you would want to organize your data in such a way. I think it would be a lot simpler if you just created another property and got a tracking code to monitor those individual sites under a single account. But there might be a use case out there that I can't think of. But in any case, for the certification exam purposes, know that if you install the tracking code on two different URLs, then Google will take care of the users and sessions and the related metrics for you. So up next we have a definition. A URL that passes data parameters for reporting is called a hit. So a hit can be a number of different things in Google Analytics. This is really just when the tracking code is triggered for some activity or behavior on your website. So it could be watching a video, it could be creating an account, it could be loading a page, and it could be any number of things that trigger that tracking code to send data to Google Analytics. So as an example, Google Analytics will send a page view hit anytime a page loads. So if we go to a website where the tracking code is installed on this home page, then a page view hit would occur when this page loaded. As another example, an event hit would be when an event is triggered with a tracking code installed. So this could be for something like a button press. So if we clicked one of these buttons, then that would trigger an event hit that would then send data back to Google Analytics. So Google Analytics actually keeps track of new versus returning users. And how does it do this? It does this two ways. It does this with browser cookies and assigning a randomly unique identifying code. So if we go to a website, and let's pretend you're a user that's come into this website, Google Analytics would assign a code using cookies to you as a user to identify whether or not you have been to this website before, or if you are coming back maybe through email or some other marketing efforts. So what happens if a user clears their cookies from their browser? So what happens to all that data that's associated with new and returning users? So if we go in here, you see the history, and we have the ability to clear our browsing data. And it'll open up a settings bar, and it'll actually clear the cookies and other site data that are related to your browsing history. And what this does is this means that Google cannot actually associate the data with that user, with that website anymore. So it breaks the chain of data capture between that unique identifier and your website. And when if that user returns after clearing their cookie, it'll create a new identifier. So it effectively refreshes and creates a new user, with a clean slate. A really cool thing that Google Analytics can do is recognize returning users over multiple sessions across different devices. And so, let's say we want to look at this website in the Google Chrome browser, but then for some reason we've switched over and now we are in the Apple Safari browser. But something that I can't show you off screen is what if we are now looking at the website on mobile. So Google does some magic in the background and manages to monitor those sessions across all sorts of different devices. Remember that a session will time out after 30 minutes of inactivity. And so if we sit here and we open this browser and then go and play somewhere else, 30 minutes pass by, a session will time out on this website with no activity. This might be outside of the scope of what you do in your job or in your business, but it's need to know for the certification exam is that in order to send data to an online, from an online point of sale systems into Google Analytics, you'll need to enable the measurement protocol feature. If you recall from the beginners video, you can set goals in Google Analytics. And so if we have a defined goal of, say, watching a video, in the reports, this will actually, if we watch a video, so if a user lands on the website and watches a video 3 times, and we have a goal of did a user watch the video, it will actually only count 1 time, so it's a unique goal versus cumulative. Also keep in mind what the potential goal type options are. So we have destination, duration, and pages, screens per session. A little bit more of an advanced one would be an event setup, which we'll cover in a later section in this course. But the 3 main ones: destination, did someone reach a specific URL on your site? Duration, did they spend a specific amount of time doing something on your site? And pages/screens per session, so how many, how active and engaged were they moving throughout your site? So 3 different measurements that allow you to sort of measure your different goal types. If you'll recall, also in our beginners video, we have what are called filters, allow us to filter the data that gets added into our Google Analytics account, properties and views. And so what we want to know here for the certification exam is that any data that is excluded from this view, so in this case, search and replace, if we wanted to exclude that data, it won't be available after 35 days time. Okay, so we're going to talk about an important topic in Google Analytics, and that is defining scope for metrics and dimensions. It's a really great article that defines and clarifies how to sort of understand scope for Google Analytics reporting. And so there's 3 main scopes to be aware of: user level, session level, and hit level. There's a 4th one, but for the purposes of the certification exam, you want to understand that those are the 3 main ones. So the user level is the highest level scope. When a user comes to your website, Google is tracking that user. The browser and the cookies are associated with a unique identifier for that user, and so that's the highest level. And there's going to be specific metrics and dimensions that are associated with that user in the Google Analytics reports. Session level, a user can have many sessions, but a session is not going to have many users. And so that's the best way to think about this. A user is the highest level. A user might have many sessions, okay? And then underneath the session level, in one session, there might be a number of different hits. And a hit, if you recall, is when somebody clicks a button, when somebody watches a video, when somebody signs up for an email form. And so in a session, there might be many different hits. So one user, highest level, many sessions for one user, and then in each of those sessions, many hits. And so that's the best way to sort of think about scope in Google Analytics. And so as this relates to your reports, what you'll notice is that in some of these reports, they're organized by specific scope. And so they don't necessarily clarify this in the reports, but you'll notice that in some of these things, like in the all pages report, like users and sessions isn't available. And so just understand that these reports, sometimes that data isn't available because of Google defined scope. One of the more important things you are going to need to do for Google Analytics is creating a measurement plan. And for the purposes of the certification exam, you really only need to know three key steps, which is just defining your business objectives, understanding your key actions, and then defining your KPIs. So let's do a little bit of a run through on what this might look like in real life so that you can have some context. We're on the GrowthHound website, and maybe we have a business objective to increase user signups or registrations. And so a key action, so that would be our defined business objective, and improve site registrations. So a key action of that would be clicking the register button. And a KPI for that would be the actual analytic event, which would be registration signups or some sort of a goal that we created in Google Analytics. So just to understand the context of what a measurement plan might look like in sort of a simplified real life example. To enable cross-domain tracking on your website, you're going to need to update the tracking code. This gets a little bit more sophisticated, but you're going to have to actually customize this tracking code. Copy and paste this to a notebook, and then you'll notice right here, after this tracking ID, we'll actually separate out and identify each of the individual websites. So it's just something to know, and then for the certification exam, just understand that to enable cross-domain tracking, you're going to need to update the tracking ID. So these filters, they cannot be applied retroactively to already processed data. So comes in, filters allow you to set that data in place. But if we go and create a filter right now, it will not retroactively apply that to all the data that's already been processed. So what if we only wanted to see data from the US and Canada? Well, we could apply a filter. Let's see what that looks like. So we'd add a filter, give it a name, Canada, select custom. Instead of exclude, we're going to include. Select a field, country, US, Canada. Click Save, and that'll apply the filter. So let's say we have a website where we have different tiers of users, silver or bronze. How would we go about classifying those and analyzing those in Google Analytics? Well, we need to enable custom dimensions. So in our admin, under the property section, we're going to go down to the custom definitions. And you see there, custom dimensions. We're going to create a new custom dimension. Let's call it tier name. It's going to be at the user level. I'm going to set it active. We're going to create that. And that'll allow us to filter data by custom dimension. As we mentioned in the previous note, enabling a tier status requires the user level scope. To access this custom dimension, where can we see this? So we can use this as a secondary dimension in standard reports. So the standard reports are going to be the acquisition, audience, real-time, behavior, and conversions. So we're in the acquisition, all traffic, and channels report. And you'll see here the secondary dimension. If we go down here, custom dimension, we can actually select tier name. And we're not going to have any data there because we haven't set that up and allowed that to process. But still you can begin to see the use of the secondary dimension in your standard reports. We can also use it in as a primary dimension in custom reports. So if we go up here, if we wanted to create a custom report, new custom report, and select a metric, just do organic searches, add a dimension, same thing to your name. It's important to understand that active dimensions only affect data that's collected after the dimension is applied. And so if we applied this today, any data before that won't be affected by that dimension, but any data after that dimension is in effect will be affected by it. So we're back in the admin menu to collect the number of comments. So if you have a website that a bunch of users are leaving comments below maybe a blog post, we'd want to implement a custom metric. Now this is more easily implemented with a tool like Google Tag Manager, but it can be done using Google Analytics, or at least begun. So we're in the property, and right beneath custom dimensions, we're going to see custom metrics, and here we can add in some extra values. Custom metric scopes can be both hit or product level. Now if you remember, the hit and product levels are the lower levels of the Google Analytics scope possibilities. If you remember from one of our previous points, events allow you to track custom events on your page, like watching a video or signing up for a newsletter. There's 4 main parameters that are associated with events: the event category, the event action, the event label, and the event value. The event label and the event value are both optional. The category and the action are both required. So the event category would be something like watching a video. You'd label the category as videos. The event action would be watching videos. And so you can then sort of lump categories and actions together to better categorize and analyze across all of your custom events. You'll see down here we have 2 event categories: the Enhance E-commerce and Contact Us. So Contact Us might be a user submitted a Contact Us submit form. So if a user submitted a Contact Us submit form 3 times, how many times would that occur in Google Analytics if it was a single session? Only once. Segments allow us to further segment our user groups in our reports. So here we are on the acquisition overview report, and if you'll notice up here, we can click add a segment. So the all users is actually a segment, and it gives us a breakdown of all of our users by channel, by conversions, by all sorts of different pieces of data. But we can actually augment this to change it to mobile and tablet traffic users, or add a new segment in addition to this to compare all users versus mobile and tablet traffic. So it gives us a breakdown for a number of different segments. So it could be by browser type, it could be by language, it could be by if a user's watched a video or engaged with one of our email campaigns. And so segments really allow us to sort of segment user groups based upon sort of important characteristics. When segmenting in reports, you're only allowed to segment up to 4 segments at a time. It won't even give you the option to do a 5th one, but you can remove or copy these and then choose from a different segment. If you actually followed along in the beginner video, I couldn't find a good example of this, but I actually just discovered this because it's a different icon. But it's a different icon because it's based on 100% of sessions, so there's no sampling going on here. And so we have a faster response or greater precision, but understand that segmented data will always be segmented before the data is processed. When segmenting by channels, use the channels report in the acquisition category. It'll give you a better breakdown of the default channel groupings. Google Ads and Google Marketing campaigns will be grouped in the display channel grouping. To analyze which web pages get the most traffic, use the All Pages report in the behavior category. So you can get a good breakdown of different metrics over time, and you'll get a breakdown of each of the individual pages on your site: home, all the different URLs with their associated metrics. For those that aren't familiar with the marketing space, attribution is a big name. It's how you determine which of your marketing activities are responsible for conversions and some of your most important business metrics. Google helps this, but you have to understand that throughout the marketing journey of a user, attribution can be quite difficult to determine just because of the sheer nature of all the different marketing activities you may be using on your site. You might be doing paid ads, you might be doing, pushing people a whole bunch of different ways to your site, in addition to email activities, and just a number of different activities. So understanding attribution models in Google Analytics and how it determines what was provided the last conversion is very helpful. So you'll see here in our view we have different selections, and so the last interaction is the last interaction that a user had with a marketing activity that then determined right before a conversion event. And so just for the Google Analytics certification exam, just to understand that that last interaction gives all the credit to that last marketing activity. The multi-channel funnels report in the conversion category overview will give you a breakdown of conversion events, and the different types that we have by channel might be organic search or paid search, referral, or even custom campaigns. You can see a whole breakdown of each of the channels and what the percentage of the total conversions that equated to the success of that goal. Now, Google does a great job of understanding which aspects of your marketing activity helped out to lead to that conversion event. So if we're in the conversions, and right beneath the multi-channel conversion section, you'll see assisted conversions. Google does a great job of providing the assist, if you're familiar with basketball, and giving an assist to specific marketing activities. And so you'll see here that some of these got assisted conversions for helping out during the marketing journey towards a user completing a goal. Retention is a big word in the marketing space. It's how users are coming back and using your service over time. And so a very powerful report to determine whether or not your product or service is what's called sticky, meaning people are coming back to it and sticking to the service, is the active users report, where you can get a breakdown of 1, 7, 14, and 28-day active users and get some information relative to the performance of those users over time. The cohort analysis is probably one of the more important reports in your Google Analytics account. It allows you to understand retention over an extended time period. And so don't let the graph and the table scare you. So it's really easy and simple to break down, because cohort analysis allows you to group users based upon time. So in this case, we are grouping users by the week. Okay, so you can see down here, and during the week of February 24th to March 2nd, we had almost 11,000 users. 11,000 users, 11,000 users. And each of those percent is how long those users stuck around over a given time period. So from February 24th, 4.25% stuck around for a whole week. By the second week, 1.95%, and it slowly gets worse and worse. It stabilizes after the week one at about 1 or 2%. And so, understanding how sticky your product or service is over time, the cohort analysis will help you determine whether or not users are coming back, and whether or not compared to other groups, whether that's improving over time. The Google Analytics standard reports are great, and if you're feeling confident with your understanding of metrics and dimensions, then you can begin to create your own custom reports. Custom reports allow you to set custom metrics, set custom dimensions as primary dimensions, and a whole number of other customizations that allow you to sort of have complete control over your report creation. If you want to see a static sortable table with rows of data, use a flat table. In the custom reports, new custom report, you'll see flat table as an option, and then you can click your dimensions and metrics. And this will be what the data displays like. If you wanted to prevent some data from appearing in a custom report, what could you do? Well, you could create a filter that filters out all of the data, or you could create a metric and a dimension that are out of each other's scope. Most of you by now are probably familiar with paid search. So when a user types a search item into the search engine, some results pop up. But are you familiar with remarketing? Remarketing allows you to target users that have searched or interacted with your website and effectively chase them around the internet. So if I click on this link and then I click out, Autopilot now has tracked that I came to their website and can begin marketing to me on other platforms like Facebook or across the Google Display search network. You only need to do two things to enable remarketing. On the properties section, we're going to click on data collection. You're going to click both these as on. This was already off. On. Click save. Now, who exactly can you target with these remarketing campaigns? Well, you could target users who visited a specific landing page, maybe from a previous marketing activity. Maybe there's a user who engaged with your site by playing a specific video that was enticing. Or you could even remarket users that speak a specific language. So remarketing is super powerful, and it's a way to retain and reacquire users that had some interest but didn't really take that step that you needed in order to acquire them. You can enable your remarketing efforts on Google using the Google Search, Google Display Network, or even in mobile applications. Just how long can you remarket to someone? Google Analytics allows you to remarket to someone for 540 days before they stop their remarketing efforts. It's important to note that this isn't the remarketing place that would be in the Google Ads application, but as far as segments are concerned, you can remarket audiences based on segment. So here we could remarket to all users, or if we remarket to a custom segment, we could even do that as well, because Google Analytics and Google Ads are tightly linked. If you remember from our previous point, cookies are what Google uses to track user behavior and assign a unique identifier to users as you browse the internet. So if you clear that browser history, Google Ads actually requires that there's at least 1,000 cookies. This is so they can get a clear picture of who a user is before they start targeting them. Dynamic retargeting is a more powerful form of remarketing. It uses Google's powerful cookie technology to target users who maybe have visited a specific website search detail, abandon a shopping cart, and a number of other sort of custom, specific things that they've interacted with on your website. So this is outside of the scope of Google Analytics, but it will be important for the Google Analytics certification exam. In order to set up dynamic retargeting, you'll need to link Google Ads to your Google Merchant Center. And for our last point, just so that you know this for the certification exam, you'll need to set up a custom dimension in order to set up dynamic retargeting in Google Analytics to begin tracking that and measuring that properly.